Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Amazing Podcast. I'm Twain Taylor, editor at Amazing, and we bring you some of the newest and the coolest happenings in the space of cloud native and Kubernetes. And we do this week in and week out. We've been at it now probably almost 3 years. So a lot of conversations. If you go to our YouTube channel or the website or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, go and check us out and see all of the past conversations. There's a bunch that we've spoken to a lot of vendors. And today we're going to talk to one more startup in the space that's solving for the challenge of application security. I have with me today Chris Lindsay, who is the application security evangelist at mend.io. That's MEND.io. It's great to have you with us, Chris. Thanks. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Twain. Thank you for the invite. I'm glad to be here today.
All right. So, Chris, to get us started, I'm curious to know about you, what you've been up to so far, what you spend your time doing these days, work-wise at Mend, or things that you do apart from Mend as well related to app security. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Chris Lindsay, and to give you a quick background, I've written software for over 35 years. I ran an application security program for a very large enterprise for 3, so there's not much I haven't seen. And I went over to Mend, where I was global director of professional services for a while, and I ran the post sales and the professional services. And then recently this year, I switched over to being an evangelist. So I actually get the chance to speak to amazing people like yourself. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn posting and just helping raise the awareness in the application security realm. So that's kind of my goal. What I do, I spend a lot of time just working with others, just making sure that, helping them through different things. I do private communities. I just do a lot of things. But thank you for the invite. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, sounds really exciting, given your background and just your involvement in the space. Even apart from Mend, I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation today. I wanted to start off by asking you about the top challenges that um, come to your mind when you think of application security. What are people dealing with? What are they talking about? What's top of mind for the people you speak to when it comes to application security?
That's a good question. There's a lot of different things going on right now. For example, AI is really coming in and taking over the space. And
Right.
you have kids who are 12 and 14-year-olds. I call it the Minecraft generation. They're finding these tools and they're so used to just digging and digging and digging and hacking on Minecraft. And now they're taking this time where, that's kind of a weird age where you're old enough to want to do things, but you're not old enough to go grab, get in your car and go drive off to a friend's house. And so
Mhm.
they spend time just, with these AI tools. How far can I go? What can I do? And how far can I dig into different things, just like Minecraft? And
Mhm.
so because of this is creating a lot of chaos in the application security field, because now you've got all these automated attacks hitting your firewalls, hitting your web application firewall, and just different things. And these leaders need to be prepared, and some leaders are and some aren't. So it's creating a
Mhm.
little bit of chaos.
Yeah, the world is changing really fast. And some really interesting connections you made there about just the culture of how attacks are changing and the threat landscape is changing. So yeah, with all of these changes, right? You said some organizations are prepared, some are not. Can you
Mhm.
talk to that point a bit more? What are some of the characteristics you've seen when you look at organizations, the ones that are prepared versus the ones that are not? What are some of the key differences between these two groups?
Right. Some of the organizations that aren't prepared really are fighting internal struggles already. And what I mean by that is their leadership, the executives, aren't really bought into the security program, or they are bought in, but the leadership of the security program, it's really about having a developer on staff. And the ones who don't have a developer on the security team, those are the ones that seem to be struggling. And what I mean by that is, you have tools coming up with all these findings, these vulnerabilities, these things that are found, SAST and DAST, and the security leadership don't know what to do with that. And so they hand it over to the developers, and the developers look at it and say, this stuff doesn't mean much to us because either it's, the different application type, it just doesn't matter. For example, you can have a command injection, but if it's a command line utility, you're already on the box. So does it matter as much? And so when you start putting things into perspective and prioritization, now you're just throwing a lot of stuff over the fence to the developers if you're not prepared. And then your developers are getting frustrated because they have all these findings and the security team is saying you got to fix them. The developers are looking at it saying this doesn't matter, or it's out of scope for the application. And so there's a lot of back and forth. And then you start throwing in these AI tools where you have auto remediation and all this stuff for the security team. And the security team's going, okay, fine. If you're not going to fix it, we'll fix it. And then they start applying all these auto remediations. And now you've created a mess. The companies that aren't struggling are the ones that actually do have like a security champion program where they're better organized. They have a developer on staff on the security team. And what you're finding there is you're finding that, okay, we have a find. The security team finds something, and then they say, wait, this is important. So then they have somebody that can penetration testing against it and find, hey, this is something critical that we need a hot fix. And so instead of handing over thousands of findings or different things to the developers, now it's curated. Now it's singled out. And now the stuff being handed to development is stuff that matters, and that builds trust, and that builds kind of a good bond between the security and the devs, and now you're working more harmonious together for the common good. So it's not just throwing stuff over. Now it's throwing stuff over saying, hey, we have a find, and guess what, we recorded that as part of our pen testing effort. And so now you can see it actually in action that's happening. And by the way, we validated this is also in production, and so they can do some really cool things there. I guess
Okay.
that's a long answer, isn't it?
Yeah, but no, there's a lot of nuances and details that we can dig into now, which one of the things that comes to my mind is that uh, it seems like there are some overlapping priorities, but there are also different priorities when you talk about dev and the security team.
Right.
So obviously, developers want to write code. That's their focus. They want to release faster, develop new features faster. So that tends to be their focus. And then along with all of that comes security, which
Mhm.
a lot of times is an afterthought. And then there's the security team, where of course security is their focus, but then application security is one part of it. And then they've got, uh, you know, uh, other parts of security, the threat detection,
Mhm.
post-production issues that come up, uh, things related to SRE and reliability,
Mhm.
all those things as well. So there's a bunch of different priorities like that. Could you talk a bit more about this, these two roles, the role of the dev and the role of the security team,
Right.
some of the dynamics between them? You already kind of teased it out in your previous response, but yeah, just bring in some more detail because that sounded really interesting, some of the things you were touching on.
Yes. No, absolutely. So your developers really, they're just trying to get their job done. You have a project management team that, maybe your CEO goes to a conference, or, your project management goes to a conference and they see, hey, the competitor's doing this feature and we need that feature, and we release every 6 months or whatever your schedule is for production, version 1, 2, 3. Hey, guess what? We saw this was what the competition's doing, so we need to do it. So get it done. And so you're constantly fighting tech debt, versions, features. And so from a development standpoint, you're already doing 45, 50-hour weeks and sometimes more. And as you get closer to a release, that becomes now 55 and 60-hour weeks. And I've lived this many times over in my career as a developer. And so I see it and I know it. And so for me to have this huge pile of work to do, and then to have security team go, hey, knock, 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 guess what? We have these findings and you need to go work on them. That just that's just more on the plate. And then when you throw security findings over the wall and you're looking at your plate going, we're already working 50, 55-hour weeks, and the stuff being thrown over is going to take a lot of effort. Now the problem becomes, is this actionable things? And all of a sudden your developers are just going to just at some point either say, the heck with the security, or we just don't have time to deal with it. So they're just going to do their thing. Meanwhile, the security folks are over there going, why aren't the devs listening to us? We're throwing this stuff over. We're trying to work with them and they just aren't working with us. And so, they're ignoring us. And so that push and that pull between both sides is happening. And that's where, when you can take a step back and you can say, you know what, from the security standpoint, we are we're one team. We are working with you. We are focused with you. And as we find things, we'll let you know, developers. And if we find anything super critical, then we'll call you, we'll share it with you, but we won't interrupt you so you can get it out the door. With that being said, we still need to address our security things. And then you can have what's called a fix campaign. And we actually did this when I was last running my team. From a development standpoint, I did this. I called it a fix campaign, where I would take a week and we would stop everything. We'd finally release the version out, and then we would take the next week to actually address security vulnerabilities. Anything that was critically found during the sprints, during the release cycle, we addressed. If it was absolutely critical, we stopped and we included it. But if it was something that could hold off until after the release, we did. And then we just spent a week. We took 12 to 15 developers and gave them 30 to 100 different things each and said, go fix us. And then after they were done, then we wrote everything up. So that way QA was aware of all the changes. And then we made sure that QA was in the loop with all the changes, with the things going on. That way they could test it and make sure that we didn't break anything. Because when you're doing that much changes across the entire application, then you need to make sure you do a full regression test to ensure that you didn't break anything. Because surely you typically do on a big application. And you may have areas that are very fragile. You're working in an eggshell area. So any changes that you do there have a really high risk of breaking things. And again, that comes back to how good is your application? How safe is it? But again, what kind of vulnerabilities are we addressing? Is it worth the risk? And sometimes it is, and sometimes maybe there's other mitigating things you can do, such as a web application firewall or other things that would actually be a mitigating option that you don't have to go out and code. And that's usually overlooked.
All right. An interesting point that you mentioned earlier in your previous response to this is the role of a security champion. And that sounds quite interesting because, like you said, I think it's not very popular to have a security champion within an organization. Could you talk a bit more about this role? Where does it come from? Is it a developer who adds on security and then makes it one of his key focus areas, their key focus areas, or is it someone from the security team that's more external and more developer friendly, or is it something else completely different?
You could easily spend a whole week talking on this, but I'll boil it down really quick. So you have two types of security champions. You have technical and non-technical. And realistically, the focus should be your security team has a developer on staff who runs the security champion program. Because again, if the security champions kind of roll up to him, then you need to make sure that you have somebody that can answer the coding questions. How should I go about fixing this? Oh, well, that's, that cross-site script injection is just simply encoding to remediate. Okay, good. So sometimes your security champions know the answers and sometimes they don't. So rolling up to, on the security side, someone that knows development is definitely key for success. So on the developer side, What I've done in the past, I've worked with a lot of companies, and what I've done is I pull a few developers out. I ask around, anybody interested in running and being a security champion? Because the guys who are definitely volunteering and interested are going to be the guys who will really go to that next level. If I volunteer you that you're going to be a security champion and say you will be doing this, maybe it's just something that they don't enjoy. And being voluntold, they push back and they go, yeah. Now I have to do this on top of all my other stuff. And
Mhm.
then that just creates an adversarial relationship. So starting off with volunteering, hey, go find people who want to do this role and be in there. And then the question becomes, what do, right? Do you pull them out and make them 100% a security champion? What does that look like? Or do you do a mixed? Because when your security champions are still touching development, say 75, 25, 75% security, depending on the size of your organization, or maybe you're smaller. Maybe the security champion part is 25, 50%, somewhere on there. And then the rest is development. So, every company is different as far as a ratio goes. But ideally, what your security champion is doing is your security champion is being part of the senior tech reviews. They're sitting there looking at the vulnerabilities and the things being identified within their realm. They're making sure the scans are running. They're making sure that from a security standpoint, when they're doing new development or designing or architecting things, that they're looking at it from a security focus angle as well. One of the things I talk frequently about is APIs, because with an API and a security champion, they can look at it and ask the questions. Did they validate everything? Did they make sure that the data coming in is untrusted? Going with a zero trust design principle into architecting your programs really brings out a lot of value from a security standpoint, because with that zero trust, now you say, we don't trust any of the data coming from the UI or from the other API to APIs or wherever. And so now you're more focused on ensuring that you have something good, you have something clean. And if it doesn't pass muster, you throw it out, you kick it out, you don't try to fix it. Too many developers will find, hey, we have data that came in for this field was, should be only 15 characters, but it was 25. You know what? We'll just truncate it. We'll stop the data here. Well, how did the data get into the API that exceeded what the UI allowed? Or maybe your mobile device, maybe your mobile front end only allows 15 characters, but we got more. Is there a man in the middle attack? Is there something malicious, like somebody doing penetration testing against us without our knowledge? So when you have something that fails validation on the API, you throw it out, you kick it out, but you log it and log where it's from, because now you can see, are we being attacked? Do we have something going on maliciously? Or is it just really another team hitting our API and they don't have proper validation on their side? So it really goes down some really interesting rabbit holes. But that's the
Mhm.
value security champions bring, is they bring that ability to look into that. Now you've got a security guy who's not super thin because he's doing 15,000 projects. Now you've got a security guy who's working directly with 15, 20, 40 different uh, uh, champions to make sure things are being done properly.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow. Yeah, I think that's really scalable and a really good structure, actually, that could really work.
Mhm.
And I think, yeah, it is definitely something that it involves cultural change, and any change with team structure takes time,
Mhm.
and it's not easy to sort of change old habits.
No,
But
it's not.
but I think you really described it well in a way that hopefully piques the interest of the listeners and viewers here, who probably want to dig in more into this and see how they can get started. If you describe the end goal, maybe they could get started somewhere simpler and,
Mhm.
on a smaller scale. Um, what do you think that would be? What would be the ideal starting point
Ye-
for leading up to a security champion and a team itself of security champions?
So I have a lot of friends that run programs, the security champion programs too. And honestly, it really kind of surprised me, because one of my friends said, I started when we had a team of 5 developers. And I'm like, wait, what? And he said, yes, because the thing is start small. You can do it with 5 developers. When you have the mindset of security out of the gate, now you're going to build secure applications. But when you're not focusing on security, and when you throw it away and ignore the security aspect, yes, your development velocity is going to be much higher. But now the problem is how good is it if you're a startup or you're an established company and your APIs get compromised and people are stealing data and you don't realize it until your whole database has been released online? The question is it worth it? And so when you start looking at it from a small size, you can grow it. You can say, okay, look, our ratios are going to be this. We have 5 developers, or call it 25 developers, or 100. We're gonna scale it accordingly. When I have 5 developers, I'm going to take a developer, and 25% of his time is going to be focused in on doing the security champion, and he's going to be making sure those questions are being asked. And when you have a technical guy, he's going to be able to look at it. But I also mentioned earlier, and I forgot about it until now, but the non-technical guy, that non-technical guy in the champion program is going to be that guy asking the question, did the developers do their training? Because a good program has developer training. You're going to spend maybe, 3-4 hours every 6 months, or maybe much longer. And there's a lot of companies out there that provide training, or when you find findings on your side from SAST or DAST, learn from those, because those are actually, things that if you're fixing them, you learn how to see, oh, this is a SQL injection. This is what it looks like. And now I can remediate it because I know what it looks like. And so your non-technical champions are going to be those that are going to just ask, did you get your training in? Let me validate your training. Let me give you a pop quiz. But as you're small, 5 developers or 100, figure out what ratio works well for you, and then just kind of grow it. And that's the beauty of when you build it right and scale it right, you're going to be able to scale as you grow.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and something that anyone can start with, irrespective of how big or small they are. So really interesting there. I want to ask you a bit about Mend and its approach to application security. So, what's the approach that Mend takes, and what's unique about it?
So Mend does a lot of stuff in the application security realm. We have software composite analysis tools. We have dependency management tools with Renovate. We do a lot of stuff with container security. We do API security. We do a lot, SAST. And so one of the things that's really nice about what we're doing is the question becomes, where do you meet the developers? Do you meet them in the middle? Do you meet them where they work? And so we have multiple ways to implement Mend. One of the ways that you can implement us is through a repository system like GitHub, where you just plug it in, you turn it on, and anytime we have findings, you committed code and findings are found, we tell you right there inside GitHub. We show you the results inside GitHub. So you're bringing the results to where the developers are familiar with. They're familiar with GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab, whichever source code management system they're using. They're actually getting the results in the area that they're familiar with. They don't have to go log into all these tools. They don't have to go log in for a SAST tool or a DAST tool or whatever. It's all right together in one place that they work. We do have a management unit UI. We do have the ability, a dashboard. We do have, that's more for the security guys, but you can also bring the developers over there too. They can dig in, they can get more details, they can run reports, they can do a lot of things from there, or they can, again, see the stuff over in the repository. So Mend really does a good job at bringing this all together for them. And, one of the things that's neat about Mend is we've been around for a very long time. I believe at the time of this recording, I think we're talking 12, 13 years. And so we're one of the original founding groups that did SCA. And the amount of data that we have, the beautiful thing about Renovate, I want to talk about real quick, is dependency management. One of the easiest ways that you can protect your environment, your development environment, your production, your customers, is dependency updates. Renovate isn't necessarily a security tool. It's actually a tech debt tool from a development standpoint. So it actually says, hey, you're running version 3.1, 3.2 just came out. We can tell based on the data that if you decide to take 3.2, we have a low probability of errors. We call it a high confidence. High confidence that if you take this, you're going to be able to just plug it in and most likely be able to run it. You still need to go through QA. I'll never tell you not to because, whenever you change anything, no matter how big or small, you still need QA. But if you do that, it will tell you. Now, low confidence means that you're going to want to plan it in to a release because, the vast majority of people that are implementing that version are failing their unit tests. And because they're failing, that means most likely you're going to fail at some point. Maybe there's breaking changes or things. But dependency management is the easiest thing that you can do from low-hanging fruit to do it. And Renovate will automatically create those pull requests for you so that you can just stay on top of things. You don't have to worry about going in the tools, dashboards, or anything to see this. It's just all right there in front of you.
All right. Wow, really interesting. One of the things we do with this being a visual podcast is to bring in like a little demo or a walkthrough of the product that we talk about. And I was wondering if you have something that you could show us in terms of a demo or a walkthrough or even an architecture diagram.
Absolutely. Let me find something here real quick for us, and we can talk about it. All right. So I am going to screen share and we'll talk about two different things real quick if that works. So I'm going to hit share and I'm going to hit, I believe that's it. And okay, so you should be seeing a GitHub screen.
Yeah.
All right. So with GitHub, we have multiple pieces, but I'm just going to kind of touch on it really quick. As I mentioned, we have the ability to see the results right where the developers are familiar with. So if I want, I can come into the pull requests, and the pull request will actually show, hey, we're fixing dependency updates. I can go in and click on different things like low. We have the following updates are here. I can click into it and I can see that a package is out. It's called Faker. It's a low confidence. It only has 50% passing. The adoption is only 5%. It's been out for a very long time, but it's a low confidence to accept and to do it. So this would be something that you would want to actually plan accordingly and put into a release cycle. If I look at neutral, I can come in and I can see that I have a confidence of neutral. Neutral means that it's been out for 3 days. The adoption is also 5%. It's got a high passing percentage, but it's neutral. So we don't want to just tell you just take it. You're going to be fine. No, we're telling you it's too early to actually know if this is going to be something that's going to be easy or hard to implement, but it does look very promising. So again, we still give you the information for you to make decisions. And then we also have the ability to do dependencies. So we have a high confidence that going in and doing this bootstrap, going in from 3.3.7 to this 5.3, it's been out for a while. It's got an adoption of 9%, passing rate of 94. We have a high confidence that if you take this, that it's going to just work for you. And this is, looking at the Renovate and that aspect, but we also bring the SAST results and other details in here for your benefit and for you to be able to see and do things. The other thing we have is our dashboard. And did it switch over to the dashboard?
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
So the security dashboard can also be used by your developers, but it's also for your security personnel. And so you can come in and you can see dependencies, the code, containers. You can see a lot of this stuff all together. And it gives you the ability to see, how many findings do I have? And I can break it down and I can quickly filter down to different things. As I create my projects, I can create labels and I can assign it. And I can pull up things that are specifically to a label. So for example, I might have a lot of projects and applications coming in, but I might flag something as a QA release or production release or just a dev release. So if I wanted to break down the results by dev or QA or production, if I label them appropriately, the results come in and I can actually drop down and do it. You can look at the trends. How are we doing for our findings? We have our applications, our projects. We can break it down into multiple levels and layers. We can see as a application, how are we doing across the board? Do we have a lot of critical findings that we need to address, or what do we look like as far as our projects go? And so the nice thing is we can look at our SAST results, our SCA results, and container results all under one dashboard. And it's just there's so many amazing things that you can do here. And it's just one of those things where it gives you the ability to have a lot of insight into what's going on. So your developers could be working inside GitHub or GitLab or whatever their SCM is and see the results, create the pull request or have pull requests created for them. And over here, the security folks can come in and see what is going on. What is the overall risk for our company? What's the overall risk for an application? And having all this information, it will help them create a good prioritization plan and be able to work with them. And again, it kind of goes back to what do you do with your interns over the summer? Well, you give them access to this. You let them go in and you can say, here are what we consider the most critical findings or vulnerabilities that we want you to look at. And they can go in, look at it here, decide what they want to do some pen testing, and then work with the devs to come up with some remediation. But that's a quick view. There's a lot more I can show you, but I figured, pretty quick, I don't want to take up everybody's time.
Yeah. No, that's a cool demo. And what I like is how it meets the needs of both developers and the security team really well. And what you explained, you really showed there, which is that for developers, they see what they need to see in GitHub itself, and they don't need to go anywhere else. So it's pretty much, zero onboarding or training needed, almost zero, I guess.
Right.
Because
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, I was just saying that it's really convenient for developers. But yeah, you were saying?
The neat thing about it is when you're dealing with something like a GitHub repository or a repository in general, the nice thing is you can configure these tools to actually go across your entire organization. So you kind of have a global configuration. So what that means is as you onboard new applications into your environment, or let's say you do a merger and acquisition, once they're now part of you, part of the organization in general, then this will automatically connect in and pull their stuff in as well. So the beautiful thing is that visibility across the board, from a security standpoint, is about what is the risk that we have. And if you haven't scanned something, you don't know the risk.
Yeah.
Getting that initial scan in quickly is very important for success.
And I think it's also really close to the source of truth, which is the code repositories itself.